Welcome to Exodus, the Bible's ultimate rescue mission. This is the story of how God delivers his people from slavery in Egypt with miracles, plagues, and a parted Red Sea. Meet Moses, the reluctant hero with a stutter who goes from shepherd to savior. Watch as God sends frogs, locusts, and darkness to break Pharaoh's stubborn heart. And don't miss the Ten Commandments, the ultimate rule book for life. Whether you're here for the drama, the faith, or just a good underdog story, Exodus has it all. Ready to see how God turns slaves into a nation? Let's dive in. Let's start with Moses, the man who would become one of the Bible's greatest leaders. But his story begins with a baby in a basket. Yep, you heard that right. Pharaoh, terrified of the growing Israelite population, orders all baby boys to be thrown into the Nile. But Moses' mom has a plan. She puts him in a basket and floats him down the river. And guess who finds him? Pharaoh's daughter. Fast forward a few years, and Moses is living in the palace. But when he sees an Egyptian beating an Israelite, he snaps. He kills the Egyptian and flees to Midian. In Midian, Moses becomes a shepherd and marries Zipporah. Life seems quiet until one day he sees a bush on fire. But here's the twist. The bush isn't burning up. God speaks from the bush, telling Moses to go back to Egypt and free the Israelites. Moses is like, who? Me? But God insists. And just like that, Moses' life changes forever. Now let's talk about the plagues. Moses and Aaron go to Pharaoh and they say, "Let my people go." But Pharaoh's like, "No way." So God sends the plagues. First, the Nile turns to blood. Then come frogs, gnats, flies, and livestock disease. But Pharaoh's heart is hardened. Next up, boils, hail, locusts, and darkness. Each plague is worse than the last, but Pharaoh still won't budge. Finally, God sends the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn. But there's a way out. The Israelites are told to sacrifice a lamb and mark their doors with its blood. When the angel of death sees the blood, it passes over their homes. Pharaoh finally gives in, and the Israelites are free to go. But don't get too excited. Pharaoh changes his mind pretty quickly. With Pharaoh's permission, the Israelites leave Egypt. But it's not long before Pharaoh changes his mind and sends his army after them. The Israelites are trapped between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army. They panic, but Moses tells them to stand firm. Then God does something incredible. He parts the Red Sea, and the Israelites walk through on dry ground. When Pharaoh's army follows, the waters crash back down, drowning them all. It's a moment of triumph and freedom, but the journey is just beginning. Next stop, the wilderness. Now the Israelites are free, but they're not out of the woods yet. They're in the wilderness, and it's not exactly a 5-star resort. First, they run out of food, so God sends manna, bread from heaven. Every morning, it's there on the ground. But there's a catch. They can only collect enough for one day. Next, they run out of water. God tells Moses to strike a rock. He does, and water gushes out. Problem solved. Finally, they reach Mount Sinai. God gives Moses the 10 Commandments, the foundation of Israel's covenant with him. But the journey is far from over. Stay tuned for more wilderness adventures. And that's Exodus, the story of freedom, faith, and God's faithfulness. From Moses' burning bush moment to the parting of the Red Sea, we've seen how God fights for his people, even when the odds seem impossible. Exodus reminds us that no matter how stuck we feel, God can make a way. Whether it's a plague, a pillar of fire, or a path through the sea, he's got it covered. So what's your takeaway? Maybe it's courage, trust, or just a reminder that God's plans are bigger than we can imagine. Thanks for joining me on this epic journey through Exodus. Next up, Leviticus, because the adventure continues. See you there.